Chris Lenois back with you on the Green Mountain Mornings program at 16 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour. Commonsnews.org is the website for your reader-supported independent news and views source for Windham County. Free on stands every Wednesday as well, and every Friday we get together with its deputy editor, Randy Holhut, joining us by phone. Good morning, Randy.
Good morning, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Hi, Joyce.
Hi, Joyce. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning to talk about some stories here. Now, we talked a lot about the circus school, which some great photos that you all have on the front page today. Last Friday, we talked a little bit about that because of Jerry Goldberg's great interview with the sisters, the Smith and Smith Fortune sisters, as far as that goes. I want to encourage everybody to look at that story that was done about the circus school, but I wanted to focus on the two nuclear stories, and I mean that literally, not nuclear as in about to blow up, but as in having to do with Vermont Yankee and Vermont delegation speaking to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission about community involvement in these issues. First of all, talking about Entergy and doing this project for fuel storage in Vernon, Mike Fair's lead paragraph here talks about how Vermont Yankee administrators were waiting 2 years for the state to give them permission to go forward with this new storage facility. Why did it take 24 months for them to get moving on this, critical part of the project, I would say?
Well, it's a critical part of the project, but nothing's done until the paperwork's done. So there were enough concerns about how the dry casks that would be storing the spent fuel would be constructed, where they would be constructed, how they would be constructed, whether the siting of it would be a threat to, say, the Connecticut River, whether they'd be safe from flooding, from earthquakes, from any other potential hazards. Like anything involving Vermont Yankee, it's never simple.
No, and there's always that push and pull between a private entity like Entergy wanting to do things based on the cost, right? And then the state wanting to do it based on safety and the social costs. When you look at how this all shook out over the 2 years, how do you think the state did as far as in its negotiations to ensure it's done as safely as possible?
I think the time it took to get this through was a reflection of how much of concern there was, and I think everyone got what they wanted. And the reality is that stuff is going to be sitting there for quite a while. There's the long-term storage for national storage for spent nuclear fuel is no closer to being done, and nobody wants one of those places in their state. And Yucca Mountain is dead. So It looks like until someone comes up with a brilliant idea on how to reuse this fuel or dispose of it, it's going to be sitting there for a while. So it behooves everyone to find the safest, most stable, most long-term storage on site. So, you lost a nuclear plant, Vernon, but you got yourself a nuclear repository.
You got yourself a nuclear repository there, and $143 million to build this repository. And right now on schedule, on budget, according to Mike's conversation with Joe Lynch, who's Entergy Vermont Yankees government affairs manager. The process of putting this together, what are we looking at in terms of timeline?
Well, they've been building they started in the summer, and they started building the concrete pad where the cask will be on. Then they were building the pad for the generator, the backup generator to maintain the monitoring of the casks. And it's just going to be taking some time to do all this stuff. The generator is 200 kilowatts, and it's the backup power to maintain these things. They say they've got 12 of the 45 casks that they need. They're going to be more things delivered as they go along. They've got to remove a building that is already there, and that's going to be another cask. So they got to take it very easily. There's asbestos in that building. There's maybe some other non-radiological waste there, so they got to have the Department of Health and the Agency of Natural Resources watch while they dismantle the building. They got to have the state nuclear engineer look into the building, and then by sometime next year, fuel will be moved out of the cooling pool where it's all sitting right now, and start moving into the dry casks as they're finished. And that's going to take about 2 or 3 years to do. And they hope to have everything in their new home by the end of 2020.
And you talk about all those different aspects of the project and even beyond the nuclear material that is going to be stored there, some of the safety issues for the people on the project and for the folks who live around that site now. Feeds into the other story that Mike wrote about in this week's edition of The Commons about our members of Congress, Patrick Leahy and Bernie Sanders in the Senate, and Peter Welch in the House, and Mike talking to Peter Welch about this letter that they wrote to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission asking for community involvement. It seems like right here is the perfect case for community involvement. Why would they, and they being the NRC here, want to limit any of that sort of involvement?
Well, the NRC's traditionally has not wanted to have the public involved in decision making, because you know how the public can be.
Yes.
They just
uncomfortable with the idea of nuclear material unsafely stored in their neighborhoods and communities. Yeah, I know how the public can be.
Yeah, and they don't want that.
How dare they? Well,
but clearly, this now that nuclear plants are closing down, people who live next to them want to have some assurances that the dismantling of the plants will be done safely, that there will be a orderly economic transition for the communities that host the plants, and that the sites of the plants will be restored to as close to greenfield status as is possible. And yes, the people should have a say in all these things happening. And of course, we here in Vermont are used to the people being very vociferous in how they feel about nuclear power, to the point where it's kind of a joke. Where if you're a bad little girl or boy, you get sent up to do the hearings in Brattleboro.
Right, right. You go deal with those people up there in southern Vermont. Well, how much of this, especially considering where we are in the process of shutting down and cleaning up Vermont Yankee, you could argue that Welch, Sanders, Leahy, they could kind of just brush their hands and say, this is somebody else's problem now. It seems to me that they're really advocating for these other non-Vermont communities by making this effort.
Well, Vernon's kind of the test case.
Right.
This is one of the bigger one of the first shutdowns of that generation of nuclear plants, and there'll be others in the coming years. And so, what happens in Vernon and in Vermont is going to have a big effect on what happens in other communities, like say Plymouth, Massachusetts, which hosts Pilgrim.
Right. Right.
So, really, the NRC has to accommodate public concern. They have to get better at informing the public about decisions that are being made. There has to be community involvement.
Yeah,
and that's what they're insisting upon. In other words, our Congress people are thinking beyond the Vermont box. Yeah,
which I think is great. Again, a testament. They could be moving on to other issues here, but they are making sure that what we learn here in Vermont gets applied in these other communities. Great stuff and great reporting on it by Mike Fair in this week's edition of The Commons. Lots of other stories as well that you can find on stands or online at commonsnews.org. We'll continue talking about those with Randy Holhut, the deputy editor of The Commons, after the bottom of the hour news break. 45 degrees outside at 20 minutes before the 9 o'clock hour. Chris Lenois back with you on the Green Mountain Mornings program and continuing our conversation with Randy Holhut, deputy editor of The Commons, your reader-supported, award-winning independent news and views source for Windham County. Free on stands every Wednesday. Go to commonsnews.org. Become a member today. Support all the great work that Randy and the rest of the staff do at The Commons. Talking a lot about Mike Fair's articles here to get things going, and talking a lot about the coverage of Vermont Yankee and the continuing shutdown and the continuing impact on the region, Randy, and a companion story of sorts to the two front page stories about this on the business and economy page, looking at the Windham County Economic Development Program and a new report from the BDCC. We've gone through, I want to say gone through in terms of they've spent $5 million of the $10 million so far, if I'm reading this correctly?
Yes.
Or allocated, I think would be a better term for it.
Yes. Since they changed the rules of the plan to make it more like a revolving loan fund than just outright showering money on projects to try and make sure there's a longer-term impact for this money. That's the restructuring and the refocusing of this project seems to have paid off in some different ways.
Yeah, I'm seeing here some of the hard numbers from this: retaining 480 jobs, creating 170 new positions. Those are certainly great numbers to hear. I mean, hundreds of jobs in a community like ours with thousands of people. That's no small potatoes.
Yes, this money was used to help keep Vermont, GS Precision from moving out of Vermont. It was used to help create the green building sector that we've heard so much about over the last couple of years. And it was also used for other projects, but with an eye toward innovation and job creation. That's kind of the two big things that Governor Shumlin has pushed with the use of this money. That this is a one-time windfall that's not going to happen again. So they wanted to squeeze out as much impact as they could out of this using this money.
And I'm glad you brought up the GS Precision, because I remember they did get, I want to say, did they get $1 million from the WikiDip Fund? I know they got from a few different sources, and I don't remember exactly how much they received from specifically this Windham County Economic Development Program Fund. But when you talk about retaining jobs and creating jobs, and I know that GS Precision's plan was to create 100 new jobs based on this financial package that the state put together. When you start doing the math on retention of GS Precision jobs and creation of GS Precision jobs alone, these numbers do become a little less impressive.
Yeah, but once again, in the economy of Windham County, which is it's doing well, but in little things. It's one or two jobs being created at a time, not 100 or 200 new jobs. There's no big home run app that's popping up there that's employing lots of people. So you're just kind of having to create a good economic climate and create jobs a little bit at a time.
And that's not to also undermine all the other resources that are going into job creation right now, which I think is worth also talking about. But it is nice to get these progress reports. And BDCC are really taking the reins on keeping people aware of these issues. Is this something that they plan on doing on a more regular basis with updating now that the program is maturing?
Well, I think considering so much scrutiny they're under and so much criticism they're under, that BDCC and SEVIDS is the knock against them, that their main reason for existence is finding grants and to keep their payroll going, and where are the jobs? Yeah. And when you're an organization under that much criticism, you better be having some pretty good public relations campaign going to justify your existence. Yeah, and R.T. Brown, who is the project manager for this fund, and I remember when they made the hire of R.T., I went into the BCTV studios and did an interview with him about this, his role in this, and he was forthcoming about some of the fits and starts that the program had and some of the learning curve that everybody needed as far as what they hoped to achieve with this money. He seems like the right guy to be at the center of this to me. Yes, and Governor Shumlin agrees. He had lots of praise for him at the NECA groundbreaking last week. Yeah, that was another occasion where, again, you're seeing all these different entities come together to try and provide more economic stimulus here in our area, and certainly, hopefully, seeing some of the fruits of that as we move forward. Moving to the towns section, and a couple of stories there that I kind of looked at as an end and a beginning. But let's start with the beginning of the Vernon Community Cafe. The first meals served down there. I think you sent Wendy down there to check out the coffee and the baked goods. Yeah. Yes, and we found out that they can make great donuts and cookies in Vernon, because they made sure that Wendy didn't leave the building without having some provisions to provide to the hungry reporters back in the office. All right, she took care of the staff. Good for her. Good for her. But Tim Arsenault, their town clerk, finding this idea in Leiden, and then Annette Royden, who is chairing that community cafe. This is a baby step forward for Vernon, but something that when I spoke to Annette, they feel really, really is crucial in terms of just morale as they move forward into this brave new world without Vermont Yankee. Yeah, and every town needs a kind of a gathering place in the center, and there's no real center in Vernon. You know, you have the town office, and there used to be the general store next to the town office, but that's gone.
Yep.
The old schoolhouse grocery, that's on the other end of town. It's closer to South Vernon than to the center of Vernon, and your town center is the town office, the school, and your dead nuclear plant.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really a good cohesive town center. So what do you do? How do you create community when the institutions that would create community are scattered all over the town? I mean, the post office is about a mile and a half from the town office. The hangout where everyone hung out was 2 miles from the town office.
Yeah.
Even Nesbitt's.
Even Nesbitt's, yeah, right down the road there
from the town office. So this is a good start, and having kind of the pop-up cafe at the library, which has become kind of a center of its own because there's also Wi-Fi there, and where there's Wi-Fi, there's people hanging out.
It helps them envision what the space could become too when they ultimately do get a general store, and the same model that we're seeing in so many other communities, right? Guilford, Williamsville, all reinvesting in this general store. Even Putney, actually. I shouldn't overlook their efforts to invigorate the general store there. We have a model here for this to happen, and Vernon obviously going to tailor it to themselves. I thought this was a great first step.
Yes, it is, and anything that can build community is a welcome thing.
Yeah, and Dummerston, similar companion story there on the Town and Village page with service of a last breakfast at the Dummerston Firehouse, and a bit of a fundraiser there. And the community all on board, and you can speak to this firsthand, being a member of that community, all on board for this new fire station. Did you attend the breakfast? Just wondering what the vibe was like there.
Well, it's during Apple Pie breakfast. This is during the Apple Pie Festival.
Okay.
So it's yet to come. But every year they're absolutely slammed, and the superlatives that Wendy throws out there, of what it takes to put on this thing. Just 11 gallons of maple syrup, 500 biscuits, 14 cases of breakfast sausage, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pancakes, apple, raspberry, blueberry, and, of course, plain old pancakes.
Right.
Biscuits and gravy and fresh applesauce and coffee and milk and juice and cider and coffee.
Coffee.
And it's always a really good dinner because the firefighters there have got this down to an art on how to do this. They move the fire trucks out of the main bay of the firehouse in Dummerston Center and have all the griddles out and just cranking out the pancakes as fast as they can. The line goes out the door, and this is one of their primary fundraisers every year.
Yeah, and my mistake that is something that is still going to happen, not something that has happened already. So people,
this is just going to be the last one at the old firehouse because they're going to tear that one down after and start building the new firehouse next year. And the hope is by the time the next Pie Festival happens, there'll be a brand new firehouse and for people to have their pancakes in.
Yeah, of course. And I with people, mouths are watering as you talk about that food. We'll be relieved to know they can still go get to the breakfast there in Dummerston and support a great cause of a new firehouse. More details available on that Town and Village page of this week's edition of the Commons. Also a special edition of the Commons this week with this fall foliage and festivities section. We're heading into the long weekend here, and certainly lots to do. That's got to be a fun thing to put together each and every year for the Commons, that fall issue and the foliage section.
Well, it's kind of the progress of the seasons. It's coming, and the apple pie duel between the pie makers in Newfane and the pie makers in Dummerston, and of course the pie makers and apple crisp makers in Guilford, and the harvest festivals in Putney, and everyone in Vermont has something going this weekend, and the colors are starting to round into form.
Yeah,
and the weather, it's going to be beautiful weather. The hurricane is staying away from us at least this weekend.
Yeah, no,
if you got friends down in Florida and the Carolinas, check up on them.
Yeah, absolutely. But it does look like we're going to have a for the most part, really pleasant weather throughout this long weekend, and certainly lots to do out there in the community. You can find out more about that in the arts section of the Commons. They always have a great calendar listings in there, and always great to talk to you each and every Friday about the contents of the Commons each and every week. Randy, we'll talk to you again soon.
Yes, because I won't be here next week.
Right. Next week, you will not be here. Do you want to talk about that, or just...
yes, I can talk about that. I don't worry about HIPAA or anything like that. I'll be going... Once again, I'll be making another trip to the Emerald City up to Dartmouth-Hitchcock. I will be going there for surgery of a laparoscopic surgery to remove a mass from my colon and remove part of it in the hope of heading off a potential cancer threat. As far as I know, I have none, but this is just in case. But I'm going to be down for the count for a few weeks while I recover for this. I'll be working from home and getting back on the radio with you probably the week after, I hope, not too whacked out from pills and whatnot. Or even that'll make more sense when I'm on drugs. But this is, one thing, if you're over the age of 50, I put mine off until I was almost 55, get the colonoscopy. Yeah, right. That is definitely the object lesson from that story, and we do wish you all the best of luck next Friday with that, Randy, and I hope I do get a chance to talk to you the very following week. That would be a good news story. Well, I hope so too, and hopefully there'll still be baseball. The Red Sox will still be in the playoffs by the time I come out of anesthesia. Amen to that. All right, have a good weekend. Thank you. All right, commonsnews.org, the online home for the Commons, your reader-supported, award-winning independent news and views source for Windham County. Back to wrap up this edition of Green Mountain Mornings after these messages.